Athens. If you could take your seats, we will get this meeting started so we're not here until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to call to order the 306th Board of Governors meeting this morning. I want to welcome everybody to Athens. For those of you who joined us last night, we closed the night out with Justice Ellington calling the dogs, so you know it was a good time. We were over at the Foundry, and if you missed dinner, you missed a good time and good fellowship, and I hope that you'll join us for the next one. I'm glad to be here. As a double dog, it always brings me pleasure to come back to Athens. This part of town is special to me. I lived in a trailer on North Avenue out there across the loop in what we called Highland Green's manufactured home community. So I enjoy coming back to Athens. This was always on my way home after I got done with class. A few housekeeping matters. This meeting is being live streamed, and so as a friendly reminder, it is open to anyone who wants to connect to the live stream, be that judges, members of the public, the media, etc. We will have some action items today, and those action items are things that are to be voted on. Only Board of Governors members are allowed to vote, and you must be in person to vote. If you are a member of the Board of Governors, you will have a green name tag. If you do not have a green name tag, and you think you're a member of the Board of Governors, you need to talk to registration. And if you don't have a name tag that's a green, please don't vote. So we're going to use the Point Solutions as the voting platform. That is this little clicker here. You can also find this on an app. I recommend you just get a clicker and not mess with the app. The clickers, if you don't have a clicker, that's a great, Thomas, thank you very much. If you have a green name tag and you do not have a clicker, if you will raise your hand and keep it raised, someone will bring you a clicker. All right, they're coming from behind, they're coming for you. So, okay, and if you don't get one, let people know. We'll have some reports, so you have a minute to get one, no rush. If you are using a mobile device, please make sure you only use one device, you use it from start to finish, and you don't sign in on multiple devices. But really, you should just get a clicker. All right, next we go to the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation. It's been fun this year. I've had our new Board of Governors members deliver the pledge and deliver the invocation. And Kevin Patrick of the Atlanta Circuit was elected to the Board of Governors, I guess, last year now. And so this will be his first full bar year. So Kevin, if you'll come up and lead us in the pledge, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Ivy. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kevin. And then Maria Justice of the Eastern Circuit, Post 3, a.k.a. Savannah, is going to lead us in the invocation. Maria?
Good morning. You may please bow your heads. Lord, as we gather today, we express tremendous gratitude for our health, well-being, and ability to assemble for the common good of our profession and those we serve. We seek guidance to always remain humble in our practice and to always remember the gravity of our responsibility. That we approach today and every day with grace and humility, and to remember the importance of not only what we do, but who our work is for. May we always remember that unified effort carries immense strength and division brings on failure. Please allow us to have a space where effective communication can occur and all messages are both given and received with open hearts and minds. Let us not forget the value of integrity, respect, and honesty in our profession. We remain grateful to those who choose to serve our community as judges, volunteers, and in all capacities, both big and small, that keep our system of justice working for our people. Thank you for your continued guidance and protection of all of us who serve. We ask all of these things in the name of a power far greater than our own. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Maria. Next, we'll recognize some special guests. Justice Sarah Hawkins Warren was here last night, but I don't think she was able to make it this morning. And Justice Charlie Bethel that I don't think was able to make it this morning, but they are our Supreme Court liaisons and wanted me to wish everyone their best and say they hope for a good and productive meeting today. Justice John Ellington was with us last night, and Justice Sean LaGrua is here, I believe. We have past presidents Bill Barwick, Robin Clark, Jay Cook, and Linda Klein was planning to be here but couldn't make it due to a family matter. So with that, after we've recognized our special guests, I'll call on Secretary Hicks for the roll call.
I was going to try to step down, but then y'all would have seen me tumble. The attendance sheets are being passed around. Please make sure that you sign in to recognize your attendance at this meeting. I'm also going to ask that you turn to page 5 and make sure your record is accurate from your previous attendance and that it properly shows the meetings that you attended and did not attend. If there are any corrections that need to be made, please email me. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Hicks. We move to our next agenda item, which is titled Future Meetings Schedule. I'm at the point in this term of service where I have a future meeting scheduled. So want to tell you that we had a site visit at Sawgrass. Both President-elect Twyman and myself and our spouses accompanying us, and I think we're both pretty excited about that meeting and all the good stuff that we have in store. I want to tell everybody that the opening night is going to be different, and I want to make sure you hear me. We're going to Florida again, where it is hot, and we are going for the opening meeting to a place that is off-site called the Yards. And it's like a par 3 golf course with a big old putting green, and it's a neat event facility. And we'll have live music, and I think we'll have a DJ, and we're going to have games, and we're going to have food trucks. It is going to be hot. If you wear what I am wearing today and wear this dark suit, you will literally roast. Don't do that. I myself will be in a golf shirt and shorts. I encourage you to wear something similar that you will be comfortable in and that you can have fun in. I think we're looking at even having the par 3 course open. And so we're going, even if you don't play golf, we're going to have some people out there to show you how to hit the ball at the hole and maybe have, not like big swing, but on the putting course or whatever. So we're going to have something for everybody. We're going to have kids games, also outside, also hot. And so it's going to be a little more casual than what we've maybe done in the past, and we're going to try and mix it up and have a good time. And then I get to present some awards the next day, and that is the future meeting update that I have to offer you. I will now turn it over to President-elect Twyman for the future meetings update.
Sounds like Ivy's trying to get off this podium. After we have all the fun we can in Sawgrass, and for our fall meeting, we are going to show a little love to not that place, but to Northwest Georgia. While the leaves are changing, and I like it. My work is done. The Lookout Mountain Judicial Circuit. We're going to go to Macklemore. Great resort up there. Fun time to be there in the fall, and it's a great facility, and we'll have a great time, and that's in October. And since it snows down on the coast in the winter, we're going to stay in Cobb County. We'll be at the Battery for our mid-year. Great little community. We'll still be out of Buckhead, and it'll be a great time there for the mid-year at the Omni Hotel at the Battery. And now it's been a couple of years, a couple to a few, since we've been over to Lake Oconee. And so we'll return there for our spring meeting before with Ocmulgee, I guess, Judicial Circuit, and before we go to the Beach Living Judicial Circuit back in Amelia Island. So that's our future meetings for the upcoming year. Looking forward to seeing everyone.
Thank you, President-elect Twyman. I know you've been working hard to plan your year. I do have one Sawgrass announcement. On Friday, we're going to bring back the golf tournament. So when you are registering, look for that. Hansel Roddenberry's done a lot of work to get us, is it Saturday now? All right, Saturday. So Saturday, we're going to have a golf tournament. Hansel Roddenberry has done a lot of work and gotten us in at the Ponte Vedra Club. So we're going to bring back the Saturday afternoon golf tournament. So that should also be a lot of fun. With that, we move to my presidential report. You know, the work of the bar, you guys really knocked it out for me at the mid-year meeting. And so my president's report is really to thank you for all the work that we did at that meeting. We got 8 rules, 9 bylaws, and 2 policies passed. And I think we were out in time for lunch. So thanks to each of you for your engagement and for paying attention and bringing your questions to us in advance and making that meeting go really well and really helping accomplish a governance update that was needed so that the bar has the rules that it needs to govern itself and to continue on. I also, we were able, as Chris alluded to the weather, I think we got it right this week. Savannah and 32 degrees was not quite what I had in mind, but we were able to pivot to Zoom for the mid-year when we needed to, and that meeting went very well, so I want to thank everybody again. And if you've noticed, we've changed the format of the meetings so that you're going to hear from the treasurer's report, the YLD report, et cetera. And a lot of that would be encapsulated in the president's report. And I did this strategically so I didn't have to talk quite as much. And so that way you can hear from the people who are doing the work and not have me announce what they're doing. So with that, I will call on Treasurer Gentry to give the treasurer's report.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. I had a great time last night, and I think we need to clap for the people who gave us such a great time last night. Despite having a little back trouble, I was still able to have a few drinks and engage with a lot of y'all, and I appreciate that. January 2025 financial statements. The results through January 31 of 2025 are at pages 12 through 27 of your green board book. The 7 months of this fiscal year ending 1/31/25, we are following our plan, our business plan, our budget plan, and we are doing well. No financial surprises. The highlights for the 7 months ending on that date can be seen at pages 15 through 17. For this bar year, excluding bar center operations, we'd budgeted a loss of about $1.3 million. For the bar center operations, we'd budgeted a profit of about $150,000. Pages 12 and 13 have a description of the line items that show more than $2,500 deviation from the budget. Based on the actual results through 1/31/25, no negative financial surprises. On page 15 of the packet, total bar expenses are at about 56%, which if you do the math, that's right, tracking right about where they should be. Let's see, pages 24 and 25 show the generous financial contributions you guys have made to the Legislative Fund and Georgia Legal Services, and these things help a lot of people across our state. So thank you so much. If there are no questions, I'll sit back down.
Thank you, Treasurer Gentry. All right, hearing no questions, I will call on President Kenneth Mitchell to give the Young Lawyers Division report.
Greetings, everybody. I stand by the YLD report, but I wanted to make a few highlights from what we've done since the spring meeting. The winter meeting, mid-year meeting. So we had our YLD Leadership Academy session 2, which was in February 11th, and we were able to go. First, I want to talk about the Capitol. So we had YLD Day at the Capitol, where our Leadership Academy learned about leaders in government. This is their picture with the governor, and this may have been one of the first pictures we've had with the governor since the pandemic, so this was a lot of fun, and they got a chance to meet our fearless leader. We also had speed networking with the lawyer legislators, and it was a great luncheon where they learned a lot from our lawyers who were in the legislature. And then I want to go back to at the Nathan Deal Judicial Center. This is with statewide business court Judge Hamrick. And they learned about what the statewide business court does, as well as the Court of Appeals. We were hosted by Judge Hodges to talk about the Court of Appeals, and they met with Justice Pinson for the Supreme Court and had an opportunity to be sworn into the Supreme Court. So that session was a great experience, and they learned a lot, and hopefully we'll build upon that on our next session. Let's see. And this is the bus ride back to the State Bar. I also wanted to highlight some CLEs we've done. We did a deposition etiquette where some of our younger lawyers talked about their experiences with depositions and do's and don'ts to some of our younger lawyers who are in the civil practice, civil litigation. Virginia Josie out of Macon, Carlos Fernandez out of Atlanta, and Taylor Dove from Savannah were able to give us those stories. And I'll go back to Leadership Academy. I did want to highlight our committee chairs for that. They've been doing a great job. We have James Banter out of Macon, and Samantha Mullers from Augusta, as well as Kelsey Spate from Alpharetta. And so they've done a great job as well, putting together a great program for our Leadership Academy. And as anybody who's been a Leadership Academy alum know, it takes a lot of work and it's a lot of traveling, as well as Senator John Kennedy, who was gracious to host us and basically as a capital host. So thank you if he's on. I know he's one of our Board of Governor members. And then we also had a jury trials and family law for our family law committee, which is led by Emily Long, Ashley O'Neill, and Jonathan Stoy out of Marietta. And this was a CLE where Judge Chris Edwards, former Judge Chris Edwards out of Fayette County, talked about how to conduct yourself in a trial in family law with divorce and custody battles. So that was a really good one for our family law committee. And we appreciate Judge Edwards for that, and it was moderated by Emily Long. And then we had the Sports Law Committee, A Night with the Hawks. There's Kathy Hampton with one of her interns who's in law school right now, and so she was able to come out. And here's some of our pictures. I think we lost to the Bucks, but it was great to be around our YLD colleagues. The Criminal Law Committee had a Balancing the Scale CLE where they prioritized mental health and work-life harmony for attorneys on March 5th. And this was, the panelists were Judge Robert McBurney out of Fulton County, Adrian Love, an ADA out of Fulton County, and Lamar Gardner, defense attorney, talking to young lawyers about managing stress, setting boundaries, burnout, especially, with sometimes having a large caseload in the criminal sector. I think that was moderated by Shaniqua Christian, who's our criminal law committee chair. And I wanted to highlight our signature fundraiser, the 18th annual signature fundraiser, Night on the Diamond, March 8th at Truist Park in the Hank Aaron Terrace. It was a well-attended event. We had a lot of fun, and we raised a lot of money. We raised about $90,000. And our goal, So that was one of our goals. It was very ambitious. And one of our chairs, he was telling me, we need to do 100,000. I said, well, let's just try 50. And he said, no, we need to go for the stars. So go for the moon. So we have a link available if anybody wants to help us get to that goal. But hopefully we can get there. And if anybody knows Terrell, he's the guy in the white suit. He was the one encouraging us. So he really put fire on the committee to make sure that we did our job, and they did a great job. We have Javars Gresham. I think he's out of Baker Hostetler in Atlanta. LaToya Williams, who's always done a great job with the bar. Kayla Kudrat, Serene Mecki, Shannon Schultz, Ayanna Smith, and Terrell Thomas. And so we started out by calling them the starting lineup on a play on the Night on the Diamond, but after the event, I named them the Hall of Fame. So they're our Hall of Famers, and they did a great job. But, the night was more about the public interest internship program and also our signature awardee. So this is Ashley Akins, who received our YLD Signature Service Award. And she's done a great job with the YLD for her whole career. Since she got into the YLD, she's done Leadership Academy, newsletter editor, board of directors, Legal Food Frenzy, and throughout her whole career, she's always just been there for the YLD. So wanted to recognize her with that YLD Signature Service Award. And then the YLD Lifetime Service Award went to Paula Frederick. I know. I know Paula's tired of the recognition, but we wanted to make sure that we also acknowledged her as young lawyers. And then here's the fun. I don't know, it could have been the wobble or the Tamia line dance, I'm not sure, but it looks like people had a great time. But next, we're gonna have our spring meeting, which is our standalone meeting next week in Nashville. That will be the YLD Leadership Academy's third session. They'll have a CLE on the Elvis Act. If anyone's familiar with the Elvis Act, it's Ensuring Likeness, Voice, and Image Security Act that Tennessee passed. And it's about protecting the rights of their professionals against the misuse, music professionals against the misuse of artificial intelligence and replicating their voices, likeness, and images. Those panelists include Anthony Adewumi, Christy Arth, and State Representative Bill Lambert. It's been moderated by YLD Board of Director member Darius Walker, who's actually my first cousin, so he's on our Board of Directors. But he's also a member of the Georgia. He's a member, yeah, your cousin too. And he's a member of the State Bar of Georgia. And yeah, so we're gonna have the CLE and a general session, as we always do, as well as the kickball game. So we're gonna have a fight for bragging rights with the Tennessee YLD. We're gonna have a kickball game after our general session. And our service project will be Cycling for Good, where we donate items to that nonprofit. And I just want to follow up and just end on the fact that we're not finished. We're going to the fourth quarter. I told our committees we're going to keep going through to June, to the annual meeting. We have a Wills Clinic on April 5th at, where is this at? Peace Baptist Church. If anybody wants to volunteer at our Wills Clinic, with the Estate and Elder Law Committee. Our Women in the Profession Committee will be doing a game with the Atlanta United, May 26th. Yeah, okay, 22nd. All right. And, but the Leadership Academy will conclude in Columbus and Augusta. But that's the state of the YLD, and if you know any young lawyers, please let them know our doors are open and we would love to have them. Thank you.
Thank you. As you can see, President Mitchell has really done a great job with the YLD, and they have been very active this year, and it's to be commended on all the hard work and success that the YLD is having. With that, we'll move to the Office of General Counsel report from General Counsel Russell Willard.
Good morning. You have my written report in your board book, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of things for you. First, it has been 9 months since I joined the bar. It has been a true pleasure renewing acquaintances with many of you and getting the opportunity to meet some of the rest of you for the first time. I realize we spent a lot of time at the mid-year, and then Kenneth just referenced it, but I want to give a big thank you to Paula Frederick. She left me with a tremendous staff that has enabled us to continue to do the legal work that you as the Board of Governors need done in the State Bar. On the disciplinary side of things, through the end of January, we had 33 cases of public discipline issued by the Supreme Court. We had another 30 cases of confidential discipline administered by the State Disciplinary Board. We continue to see an increase in the number of grievances that are filed against Georgia attorneys. Coming out of the pandemic, we saw in the first 6 months of this bar year more grievances filed against attorneys than we saw in the first 10 months of bar year 23 and 24. We are continuing to process those cases, get the cases that have any merit up to the State Disciplinary Board for investigation and handling by the Disciplinary Board. On the Bar Council side, As you all are aware, you passed a number of amendments to the bylaws and new bylaws at the mid-year meeting. We had 4 amendments and 5 new bylaws. Those are all now reflected in the bar handbook as well as on the bar website. We had 5 new rules adopted by the Supreme Court through the time of publication of this bar book. Since the board book went to the printer, the Supreme Court was kind enough to also pass amendments to the rules that you had sent up to them at the mid-year meeting. So Bar Rule 1-501, which streamlined the appeals process for late fees, as well as 1-501.1, which changed from an escalating schedule of late fees to a flat $175 for a late fee, are both now enacted rules effective April 17th of this year. I appreciate the opportunity to serve you as your general counsel, and I look forward to working with all of you. If anyone has any suggestions for our office, please feel free to reach out to me via email, phone, or grabbing me in person like many of you did last night. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. We appreciate it. I also want to thank you and Bill Neesmith again for the hours we spent on the phone and a screen share as we worked on the 8 rules, 9 bylaws, and 2 policies that were passed at the mid-year meeting. Our next agenda item is our 2025 legislative update brought to us by our Director of Governmental Affairs, Jennifer McNeely.
Good morning, everyone. And before I go into the report, I just want to thank all of you who've reached out. This is my first meeting. I've been with the bar since October, but unfortunately I couldn't join this past mid-year meeting because I tore my Achilles, and so I am slowly coming back, but I appreciate those who've reached out, and very happy to be in this role. For our legislative update, we are 13 days and really 6 legislative days remaining until sine die, which is going to be on April 4th. Next week, the legislature is going to meet 3 days, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then they'll do something very similar to that the following week for the last week of session. For the bills that we were focused on this year as a bar, HB 327, which was our fiduciary code section rewrite. I want to give a shout out to the fiduciary section. Y'all did an amazing job working on that bill and working with legislative counsel and our team. That bill was unanimously voted out of both the Senate and House Judiciary committees, and so now we're just awaiting them to get on the rules calendar soon. But you did get a special shout out from the Senate Judiciary Chair, who appreciated the work of the bar. They enjoy getting bills like that from our sections because they know that they've been vetted, they know what's going on, which makes it a lot easier for them to be able to update those code sections. So truly appreciate that work that the sections do because it makes a difference for us at the Capitol. 2 other bills that we were supportive of, although we did not take the lead on, which was HB 85 and HB 86. Those are the Superior Court compensation reform bills and the statewide judicial compensation reform bills. Those both also passed out of the House and Senate Judiciary committees, and so we're just waiting on them to get on the rules calendar. This past week, the rules calendar was mainly focused on bills that were department bills, like things from the different agencies, and so this coming week, we anticipate more bills to be moving prior to sine die week. The other 2 budget requests that the Judicial Council had and that we were supportive of, which were going to be in the fiscal year 2026 budget, funding for victims of domestic violence, as well as the Georgia Resource Centers. Those have been included in the current budget, and we anticipate there being no issues with those line items going forward. Some other key legislation that we're just monitoring that may be of interest to members of the bar, HB 530, which allows for electronic filing in probate courts. That has passed both of the House and the Senate Judiciary Committee, and so we expect that to move as well on the rules calendar soon. HB 426, nonpartisan elections for magistrate court. That has also moved, and it's going to be on the governor's desk. It should have, I think it came out this past week, so that's going to be on the governor's desk for him to sign. HB 406, which increases the retirement age for Superior Court judges from 60 to 65, has also passed both houses and is heading to the governor's desk. One bill that I do want to note that was dropped late February, which was Senate Bill 215. It was a state bar reorganization bill. That bill was dropped by Senator Randy Robertson. And General Counsel Russ Willard and I went and met with him because he really wanted to understand our disciplinary process and what the state bar does. And I think that there was some misunderstanding there. And so that's an opportunity for us to do some education and to just sort of explain what we do here at the bar, the role of the Board of Governors, the role of what you all do as volunteers within our bar. And so that's something that we're working on. It's not a bill that's moving in at this point, and it's not going to move this session, but it's still something that we wanted to make sure that we're aware of and that we're on top of. And overall, like I said, that meeting went very well, and this year's our agenda's gone well as far as the things that we were focused on. And if you have any questions or anything like that, please feel free to reach out, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jen. We appreciate it, and we appreciate your hard work at the Capitol. And now, our Executive Director, Damon Elmore, is going to come give us the unallocated cash report that we had talked about would be forthcoming for several meetings now. And so, Executive Director Elmore.
Ivy, thank you. Members of the board, thank you. Justice LaGrua, good morning. We appreciate the opportunity to provide an update related to unallocated cash. This report is designed with a brief background and history related to our work in this area. We'll then provide a review of how the unallocated cash has been invested and how it interplays with the remaining balance of the budget. Most of the focus will begin in 2021, and that's for a number of reasons. First, it's easiest for me as that's when I started and can take ownership of or be accountable for. Second, it gives us a 4-year historical picture, which is very helpful. That time includes a period impacted by the pause in the normal day-to-day as a result of the COVID pandemic. But at the same time, it also looks at post-pandemic fiscal analysis, particularly with new pressures from inflation and higher costs and expenses. The summary and any potential projects that we describe will be through a lens of 7 areas of focus, and this is how we pay attention to any unallocated cash investment or recommendation. First, we recommend investments in necessary technology upgrades. Excuse me. We recommend investments that are specifically for the State Bar Conference Center, and when we talk Conference Center, we're talking the 3rd floor. We recommend investments for the main office and for our State Bar satellite offices. We recommend investments for current and prospective tenant improvements. As a landlord and owner of that building, we try to enhance the facility to attract people to take up shop at 104 Marietta Street. We made recommendations for investments in the building's infrastructure. We made a long-term recommendation for an increase in our cash reserve. And finally, there were or can be some minor miscellaneous investments. After the walkthrough with details, we'll also provide a preview of our longer-term recommendations. And when we talk longer-term recommendations, it's important for me to mention that as we discuss future plans, remember all forward-looking statements contain our beliefs and representations about certain plans and events. All forward-looking statements involve risks and uncertainties that may cause actual events to significantly differ from the projections. You may remember that at the beginning of this focus and analysis, we had roughly $10 million that was not otherwise designated. That was a combination of COVID savings, transfers of ICLE cash from Athens, profitable revenue from the ICLE programming, although I got to tell you, margins are narrowing on programming now, savings in our budget on salaries and other positive events. And it was probably around this time that we described it as unallocated cash versus excess cash. In 2022, we presented a report to you all at the fall meeting. It was a summary of the study conducted where we evaluated 5 to 6 equivalent bar associations and their policy for cash reserves and spend. We found that places like Michigan, Missouri, Alabama, Ohio, and Florida carried anywhere from $8 million to over $60 million of unrestricted net assets. We also commissioned an engineering study for 104 Marietta Street, and it focused on the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and systems needs of the Bar Center. No such evaluation had been carried out since the initial analysis that was part of the purchase around 1996, and for a building built in 3 parts, first in 1960, 1964, and 1988. So, we completed our first pen-to-paper list of recommendations for investments with the unallocated cash. That first list was a 30,000-foot review at the time, and priorities listed then included that engineering study for the building, sealing of windows that were leaking, repairs to the main drain line, tenant improvements for one of our tenants, the Chief Justice's Commission on Professionalism, an initial budget for the website refresh, and then contemplating investments like an increase in the litigation reserve and restroom updates. We continued our work on a comprehensive plan, and we continue our work on a comprehensive plan, keeping those previously mentioned areas in mind, and then we developed a 4+ year project plan or list of potential investments. We felt that this would support our recommendations if we were thorough in our scrutiny, prudent in our application, and detailed in our analysis. And that may be why it feels that the spend down has been intentional or conservative and not drastic and impractical. But now, with major projects underway or completed, materials delivered or ordered, and other things that are happening and execution in play, we're seeing that the spend appears more aggressive. Before we talk additional detail, I wanted to highlight this chart. Now, I think you've seen this in the last 3 reports or so, and it provides a visual trend of the unallocated cash spend. You probably also noted that we added detail to the status and use of cash and investments report. This one is on page 21 of your board book. And we'll continue to provide this visual and other details, although it may peak at times and the data is only accurate at the time that the report is run. But we like this design as it shows positive tracking of our progress. We review the unallocated cash position with key officers like the President, President-elect, and Treasurer on a regular basis. We provide an additional update to the full Executive Committee and did so most recently at our February meeting. Our tracking sheets are detailed and have gone through several iterations, but now they include columns that show status and notes, the budgeted amounts for the investment, the progress on the spend at certain intervals, and any remaining balance of the budget at the completion of the project, or if it's in the middle of the process. The 2023-2024 bar year saw the most detailed plan and spend to this point. And so this slide represents the unallocated investments in corresponding categories through December 31st, 2024, capturing that bar year as well as part of the 24-25 bar year. In the 2023-2024 bar year, a grand total of $1.26 million was spent on the identified projects. For reference, $1.26 million would be an additional $24 in a dues increase. And a majority of those investments were for the Bar Center or bar operations. If I got it right, I guess somewhere around here. We've seen a continual uptick in conference center traffic, both with continuing education programs and partnerships with broader agencies to have their programs. We had the APD command staff at the Bar Center in February. But here are some detailed highlights. And so in the technology and website databases category, that's about 25% of the spend, there are a couple things that are included in there. So the revamp to the bar's website was about $443,999. There's still some maintenance and overflow charges that may hit connected to it. Then we needed an upgrade to our IMIS database, which is our member database, which runs the back-end interplay with the directory or your CLE hours tracking, or even into work that happens in the Office of the General Counsel. So with this 25% in the technology and the website databases, that totaled $565,029. Then as it relates to the State Bar Conference Center, this portion right here, here are where those investments were. So we added speakers and microphones in the auditorium, rooms A, room 5, and room 3. Particularly important as Zoom interface became a part of it and the technology was just old. You all have been in those meetings where I can't hear you. What did they just say? Please ask the person to go to the microphone. Hopefully that's been obviated a bit. That's $184,153 in an investment in those rooms. We needed to core and add some electrical upgrades in rooms 3 and 5. That would be electrical outlets put in the floor. So when you're in your meeting, you can plug up your laptop and not pay attention to what's actually happening. We made that more convenient for you. It's $50,000, $50,350. With this, we made some safety investments. We added some cameras in our parking decks. There were some courtroom video upgrades. The parking deck cameras, $9,750. The courtroom video upgrades, $34,024. That's particularly important where we do many disciplinary matters in that courtroom. Our mock trial programs run in that courtroom, and people are using them to sort of rehearse or practice for other litigation needs. And then in that conference center category, we had some other miscellaneous thing, including we expanded our Wi-Fi access to the basement and then the auditorium. So the total for that State Bar Conference Center category was $280,427. In the category for the State Bar Center and satellite offices, here where those charges were, we did flooring upgrades for the main office, our sub-basement, and the third floor. Hadn't had those updates since 2008. That was $390,902. If you've been to the Tifton office, you recognize that we needed some updates to the furniture there. So we made an investment in the Tifton office and continue to see regular use in that office. And thank you to all of the Middle Georgia people that take advantage of it. That's $42,027. We made an investment to do a preliminary survey, and this is one of those future forward things, but we'll talk about it. So we looked at a mechanical, electrical, plumbing, MEP, and architectural planning for a potential move of the Office of General Counsel. We've run out of space, so we're thinking of moving the Office of General Counsel from its current floor offices on the first floor to potentially a second floor level. We have made, this is as far as we've gotten on that, and it's still preliminary, but in order to determine how we would reconfigure that space and what was necessary, we needed the design, and that was $18,265. We added some additional equipment in reception for the screening and the complaint processing. One, Russ showed you that there was the need because of the increase in complaints, but this one is also sort of a safety and an interplay. It will allow someone who is making an inquiry or making a complaint. We get regular in-person traffic from people, many times people who are often frustrated or upset. So this will allow them to come to a kiosk in that reception area and either have an instant question or be able to interface with someone without putting any of our employees in danger or heightening the confrontation or the situation. That was $6,253. The IT office needed some enhancements. I think some of this is as we continue to evaluate, we are still shell-shocked from the unauthorized access event. And so IC made some enhancements with some Ethernet drop-downs, and that was $7,130, and then some additional improvements. But for the State Bar office and satellite offices, that total was $468,682. The tenant improvements that we're talking about, this category here, there were costs with a new tenant and potentials for the 6th floor. If you don't know specifically, Georgia Casa now has their headquarters in the 6th floor at 104 Marietta Street, and we needed to change the space in order to attract the tenant. The goal, the hope, the aim is to see some of that realized over time with the longer-term lease coming back, but the initial investment for that and then painting in the common areas was $274,075. We did some other work on that sixth floor to try and attract, because we still have space in between Georgia CASA and the Georgia Bar Foundation, and we have some spaces near where the Chief Justice's Commission on Professionalism is, and that was $74,434. Some of you may know we spent a lot of time looking at a potential tenant for that fifth floor. If you haven't been to the bar building and seen our fifth floor, it is a cold shell, meaning it's just a floor and columns. And it has been an albatross for us for a long time because it is 43,000 square feet of available space. But we had a strong lead with a tenant through the General Services Administration. I can't not say it was the Passport Office. And we went down a long and windy road with them, ultimately deciding that it wasn't worth the investment. But we needed to spend about $27,133 to explore that. Most of those costs were for earthquake analysis and some other structural analysis that needed to happen as part of the process. And then the Georgia Bar Foundation, as a tenant, was entitled to some improvements in their area. They included a small kitchenette and some carpeting and painting updates, and we made those for that tenant, and that's $35,215. So this tenant improvements, that 18%, is $417,693. The infrastructure is where we spend most of the time making an analysis, and in this report, it represents only about 25%. We needed to update our electrical panel to a 400 amp. Now think breaker boxes. Now think of a breaker box that would have been installed in 1960, what it looks like and how it's different. We were literally robbing Peter to pay Paul, and the fifth floor came in handy this time, where we would take breakers from the fifth floor so there weren't many people there and repair them where they needed to go. But we were running out of options in that way. So our electrical panel needed to come up, probably some code violation that we had initially, but ultimately it needed to be repaired. That investment was $375,170. Similarly, we needed to update our building management system and digital controls. So think about the software that runs the units, the boilers, the chillers, everything in the building. It was on not an MS-DOS, it was on an old operating platform, and everything was beginning to not be able to interplay or talk to each other. That investment was $119,775. We made modifications to the front door to first provide greater wheelchair access, but to also help with some safety and security because the older doors weren't coming together. And with this sort of foyer module, it allows security greater time to see the visitors that are coming in and potentially slow down or de-escalate an aggressive situation. That investment was $43,824. We made an investment in the parking deck to add some EV charging stations. That is a member benefit first, but we also believe that that may ultimately prove to be a revenue generator. But that initial investment right now is $19,895. Then we also had to make some updates and improvements to our fire safety panels. That was $11,177. So the infrastructure total alone is $569,838. Now, keep in mind that you will see that the infrastructure recommendations are significant for the proposed recommendations. But from 2021 to 2024, December 2024, the investments that were made with the unallocated cash for these categories and for the numbers I've shown is $2,307,556. Here's where the future allocations or proposed recommendations will be. And this continues to be a working module, sometimes going faster, sometimes going slower. I think I should have also mentioned the miscellaneous in the first slide. It was at a 0%, but that was because it was nominal. It was $5,888, and we needed to put in some outdoor heaters and then some tables and chairs for our break room. But for future projects and investments for the technology and website, you can see we don't have any significantly planned for future investments. But there will be some need. The most significant need will be for improvements in our president's and our YLD past president's boardroom. Great use, heavy use in those boardrooms. You'll remember that's another one where people are oftentimes feeling unheard or have an inability to be heard. It's another one where technology just hasn't stayed up to date. Kyle and Matthew and Mark and our conference center team have done a fantastic job buying parts off of eBay or making improvements where they can, but we need to make the investments in both of those room for continued effective use, and the investments there will be $163,000. And then there may be some payments that are hitting after the future period, about $2,500 for the bar website maintenance or other items. But the totals here are $171,561. For the State Bar Conference Center, this is one that we delay and have delayed, but there needs to be an investment made in our restroom upgrades, both from a cosmetic standpoint, but also really for some ADA compliance. And right now, we are grandfathered in with what we have, and we haven't found that there was any heavy concern or use, but it stays on our mind, and it is paramount for us to consider that. But that ain't cheap for the restrooms in the conference center, and it's broken down because it's not only restrooms in the conference center, but it's also the restrooms on our first floor. So looking at conference center alone, design cost and hard costs for the restroom upgrades, $429,050. And then we want to make an investment in chairs in our conference center for auditorium, room 5, room A, room 3, 1, 2, all of them. If you've noticed some of the chairs, sometimes it's embarrassing. Fortunately, we've put them in that front row because we know one sits up there, and so that's where the tattered or tethered chairs are. But we've spent the greater part of a year evaluating tables or chairs that are durable and provide comfort and convenience for the members when they're in those meetings, and that's a $50,000 investment. So future investments, proposed investments, recommended investments for the State Bar Conference Center are at $479,950. For our State Bar office and our satellite offices, it's the other half of that restroom thing. So that's the other $429,250. But if we were to move the office of the General Counsel, that would be roughly $281,735. Now, again, perspective and creative. We think there might be some additional sources that could help minimize the cost on that, but we need to be creative and make sure that it's relevant and connected in that move. But the total, including some of the miscellaneous furniture for the State Bar offices and satellite offices, is $731,932. Fun part. Now, the tenant improvements, none that are necessarily identified, but we could get aggressive on that 5th floor, and if we do, that's at least $1 million investment to go from that cold shell to a warm shell. That's before anything else happens. And then to get real creative, we even contemplated with the passport office, because really the sticking point was the dedicated access that they needed. They needed their people to come into a dedicated elevator, and they needed this access. So we considered knocking out a wall on that 5th floor and having the parking deck go directly into that 5th floor. But then we were thinking about the constraints that it would put on the parking deck and just all of the other activity. If you've ever driven down Peachtree Street or had to go to the passport office, you see that they, in the words of the street, stay busy. And so it was tough contemplating putting all of that together to not be a disruption to our tenants and to not be a disruption to the members that would need to come there and to not be a disruption. But if we made any investment in that floor that just sits there, it's probably at least $1 million. But there are a series of infrastructure repairs that we have to be mindful of, and that would total $10,971,572. Over a 4-year period, the engineering study recommended that we need to make investments in our plumbing. Beautiful craftsmanship and work that was done on the plumbing, fantastic. However, lines that are behind plaster walls that need to be accessed, and probably for materials that are not available anymore. $6 million over a 4-year period to make the right upgrades and investment in our plumbing. Our lobby HVAC system will probably need some repairs, and that's $1.6 million there. We have an air handling unit. Oh, it is beautiful stuff, y'all. If y'all come to the 6th floor and want to go to the roof, I promise you it's fantastic to see how the engineering was done back then, where air is brought in from the inside and it is distributed throughout the building. It really is fascinating, but it's old, like me. And so, you know, a unit there would be $1.25 million. We have a lot of windows, beautiful windows. The best windows, great windows that are around. But if we want to make some changes or investments to those single pane windows, who does that anymore? That's $250,000. And don't forget, our windows are not only on the north side, the Marietta Street side, but on the Wall Street, that back alley side. We've got windows back there too. We have a generator that we need to replace, and that'd be a $200,000 investment. And our cooling tower will need to be replaced, and that's a $400,000 investment. So $10,971,572 for future investments on the infrastructure alone. And then for our cash reserve, we are making an investment of $1.25 million to supplement both the Barr Center and the operating cash reserve. So projected investments from January 2025 to June 2030, $13,625,015. Remember, I started the report reminding that we had $10 million in unallocated cash before. So it should be noted, and let me remind, however, that these are long-term, and the present need has often taken priority over our recommendations. But as you will also see, we approach even the long-term projects with caution, as the rapid evaporation of these resources could put us in a truly complicated position. Nevertheless, these are the recommendations as currently outlined and the things that we're mindful of. You know what, I'm gonna stop here, I had it at the end. But thanks to Ron, my partner in being a asset manager and landlord, thanks to Steve before, and thanks to Tim before for their work as partners through Cushman and Wakefield for catching things and helping us be prudent as we work on improving the building. Thank you for Russ and Sarah as allowing us to snowball or kick around some of these ideas as we evaluate them. Almost every member of the team provides some input, and I am really grateful to them, and you all should be really grateful to them for their work there. So I wanted to make sure I put that in as that at that point. So these are the categories and items that have had the investment made, planned, and identified. We know that other organizations manage reserves for genuine crisis, and some that have been identified for us include the real, very real threat and risk of litigation. And as I mentioned, we know that if we were to make that investment in the 5th floor, it would be $1 million. But as we continue, as we move toward the future, we continue to remain cautious in our approach. And you know, we know that a select number of members have encouraged a more aggressive bleed of the unallocated cash, particularly when coupled with our need to request a nominal increase to the dues, our revenue source. We're all aware of the risks in the big picture. But if we assume all of the projects, or at least most of them, become necessary, and we allocate as recommended in the multi-year plan, and we manage our budget to 96 to 97% each year, and if we budget to a loss, and if we see our expenses rise 4 to 8% on average, and we limit our revenue to a 2 to 3% increase, we project an upside down unallocated cash position in year 2025, 2026, 2027 in an amount around $1.5 million. Assuming all of those investments are made, particularly those infrastructure investments. And this doesn't even take into account changes to the CLE rules that could impact ICLE revenue. And it is without any additional staff recommendations, like the 2 to 4 more positions we believe are necessary to make the Office of the General Counsel our most important activity optimal. That's why we're intentional, and that is why we evaluate. Our role is to constantly think about this on a day in and day out basis. This is where I would have asked to share those thanks, and so I'll ask again, and make recommendations that are practical, conservative, and best for our membership and the assets that they entrust to us. And we'll continue to take that job seriously, those jobs seriously, and provide guidance and updates only with that as the backdrop. So here, I'll take any questions. No, thank you. All right, if you don't have any here, you want to digest some of that. Oh, here we go. Hey, Kate. Yeah, I'll repeat for you if you want. Or if you want to come to this one, I think we're on here.
There we go. Okay, thank you. I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Don't.
I hate to be like that person, but since I don't see Judge Cannon here. Oh. Okay, I didn't even mean that, and that's a great joke.
Do y'all want to get together and then come back, or?
That timing was impeccable.
It's been 5 years.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
You're back. I have just a couple of questions to help me understand the numbers, Damon, if you don't mind. When y'all were looking at other jurisdictions as far as what kind of cash reserves they carry, did you look at, for mandatory bars, what dues are in other jurisdictions?
Yeah, all of those. What the dues are?
Yeah, dues.
We did, yes.
Okay, how do they compare?
We still remain the 5th lowest
Okay.
dues level
Of a mandatory bar?
of the mandatory bars, yeah.
What, can you give us some examples?
I could tell
I
you.
assume New York, and California are much higher than us.
Yeah,
but
not
like
mandatory
Florida-
bars,
Okay.
though, but as far, I could tell you the southern district, we are lower than Florida. We are slightly higher than Texas, which hasn't seen a dues increase in 10 years, but they are going to raise their bar dues $25 this year, so we will be less than Texas.
Okay.
And so in all of the others in that analysis, Michigan is mandatory, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama are all mandatory. Mississippi and Alabama are slightly lower.
Okay.
On the license fee, now that is just the top line number, not including the assessments.
Okay.
It's also not including CLEs that some jurisdictions cover in their bar dues. Also, other jurisdictions give discounts for government lawyers, young lawyers, et cetera. So
Hey,
we are
stop
not.
stealing my questions, Judge.
We are not fifth. We are not 5th lowest. I'm just.
That was my next question was, I didn't see a distinction, and I had the benefit of sitting next to Bert Hummel, so I did bounce a few of my questions off of him to eliminate a few. But I didn't see any distinction for district attorneys, for public defenders, for legal aid attorneys. Are there any considerations for people in those situations?
We haven't had any considerations for that. That's going to wind up being a question for you all
Okay.
eventually. Kentucky being an example that includes CLE in in their dues. Ironically, there is discussion as part of the CLE rules modification to shift to a CLE fee that is applied at the time of the dues that will cover all CLEs if we go with the recommendation, seeing technically about a 50% drop in CLE fees, and also provide a free CLE which will cover all of your CLE options. That is very preliminary right now and not part of it, but yes.
Okay. I saw how much the cash reserves were in 2024. How much has the cash reserve been in prior years? Like, where are we compared to prior to 2024?
I don't have the answer to that. It certainly wasn't as significant because all of those issues came together at the same time. That was when we finally transferred all of that was the biggest thing, the ICLE cash that was transferred to the bar department, the significant savings that we saw as a result of COVID, and some of the staff savings, but I don't know what that number looks like. Ron, you got any prediction of what it was? Yeah.
Okay. How much of the $10 million projected investments is the bar planning to do this year?
The only thing that we have plans for this year, you got the schedules, Ron? And when we say planned, this is just consistent with the 4-year. We would move it if it's not necessary, if it's not
Right.
urgent, but this is just what the plan says.
Okay. You're on the spot.
Show her the full year schedule.
Maybe everyone should hear. So for the projected year of 24-25, the numbers that we had estimated remaining to spend is $875,000 in the various projects. You're welcome.
So the projected dues increase would result in, is it 2 million increased revenue?
The 1.26 million is about a $24. That's just an equivalent. We weren't
Okay.
talking about what the dues increase that will be before you all today does or impacts. It impacts
Oh.
none of those projects. None of those
Okay,
projects.
so in the book, the projected budget does not include a dues increase.
It does include a dues
Okay.
increase. The projected budget does not include those recommendations.
Oh, okay, so that would be 800,000 in addition to the
That's-
projected loss.
That's right.
Okay, so most of the expenses that we see increasing were things like, not to call y'all out, but salaries,
It's
not
not-
necessarily bar improvements.
It's not a call out. That's how the work
Okay.
is done. But salary increases, benefits increases.
Okay.
Yes, the addition of 2 to 3 more positions in the Office of General Counsel. And a lot of it is expenses for meetings, you know, and those are the large expenses. But you're right. Anything for the dues increase are solely for the operation of the bar and not any of the recommendations that are attached to the unallocated cash plan.
Okay. My only other comment is, you know, I feel like we're in an uncertain economic climate. And yeah, we're all here, and this is a very expensive thing that we all do voluntarily. But that's not the case for everybody. And so I'm a little worried about young lawyers. I'm worried about people in public office. I'm worried about people that are outside the metro Atlanta area. Even in my own circuit, we're continuing to increase. And I'm just wondering what they think when they constantly see the increases and we come to them and we're like, well, it's, you know, bar center improvements and we need to add reserve cash. I'm just wondering if, like, right now is the right time to be telling younger lawyers and people in public service when things are already tight, we don't know what's going to happen with, you know, I just think there's a lot of uncertainty. So I just want to put that out there. So thank you for answering my questions.
No,
David.
not
I
a
really
problem.
appreciate it.
And if we need additional detail, we'll give it. And we think that's right. I think that's why we are very slow in our approach with some of these things. There are those factors, but there are also some young lawyers that are making money that I'd love to trade with, Judge. Judge Cannon.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm David Cannon. I've been a board member for 22 years now. So I'm one of our more senior members, and I've heard the budget discussions for 22 years and listened to what has been presented and have continuously fought for the truth. I respect Damon, known him since we were in YLD together, and I know he takes this all seriously. My concern is, and always has been, that we have continuously run a surplus of, I think, as low as $5 million and as high as $12 million every year since I've been on the board. We have allocated $4 million for, well, we have 4.75 in restricted reserves, 2.75 for bar operations, and $2 million for the bar center. Those numbers probably should go up because when I was first on the board, our budget was $5 million, and now it's 13.5, which is concerning. But our membership has gone from 33,000 to a little over 50,000. But that also brings in additional revenue. Part of the problem with our revenue numbers is we add about 1,000 lawyers a year and don't allocate for that, and in the projections, when they start paying their dues, it goes up. We also have historically charged younger lawyers the $400 building fee and the $100 bad lawyer fee. As soon as they came in, we got rid of the bar building fee some years ago, even though that was 10 years after we burned the note. There may be some reason to bring something like that back. My concern has continuously been we continue to raise our bar dues $3 to $5 a year, or $3 to $5 every other year, to generate an extra $300,000 to $500,000 when we're sitting on $10 million in cash. We are a taxing authority. We can tax our members when we need to tax our members, when we need to replace the chiller, when we need to replace the elevator, when we need to do what other things. We don't want to do a jump $50 bar due rate or charge them a one-time $25 fee, but at least that would be more transparent as to what's going on. Instead, for the last 10 plus years, we have been sitting on $10 million, and we continue to raise our bar dues to generate an additional $300,000 to $500,000 a year to not spend it. So our bar dues should stay the same, should have stayed the same for the last 10 years, and us continue to spend down the surplus, and then when the surplus is gone and we have an expense, then we should tell our members we have an expense and then spend the money on it. Has been my biggest problem the whole time, and it continues to be the problem, and it will continue to be until I give up and leave. But I'm not willing to do that yet, so.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Judge. Was there a question?
Isn't all that true?
Yeah. As Speaker Burns would say, if the gentleman believes it so.
You tell me where I'm wrong.
Well, I will not here.
I think because you can't. You can't tell me. None of those things that I gave you are incorrect information.
I think your numbers are slightly skewed, and I think the reasons or the rationale is a bit off. And I think that insofar as it implies that we are trying to hoard cash, I think that that's misguided.
No,
Judge,
no, it is not. We have not tried to do this. This is purely by accident, and we haven't done anything to fix the problem, and we continue to raise the dues every year.
There's an easy fix. We could spend that money down, but we don't want to do that.
I would rather us spend it and use it instead of just sitting there.
I got you, man. Hey, let me also say that when we start to talk about other bars, we're also careful in that analysis because we own a building, and that is something that we own 436,000 square feet of building, and that is not something that you see with other bars. We have functions that other bars don't do. Missouri doesn't do discipline. We've got that function. We are shaped or set up differently. Alabama has their dues going through the Treasury, and then it comes back out with a budget request. So it's Gala apples to Red Delicious apples.
Good morning.
Hi.
I just wanted to get up and say it. First, I have great confidence in the leadership of the bar. And as the judge mentioned, Damon, we were all young lawyers together, and we're now old lawyers together. And I just want to thank you, Damon.
Sure.
Also want to thank Ron, because these are difficult jobs. I do think we have to have a reserve. I am not an MBA, but there's probably some in the room who can tell us about this. And if my husband weren't sleeping in, he could come in and talk about how you need to have a reserve. And that's part of financial planning and keeping your business alive, and this is for the long term. And one of the young ladies mentioned, troubling financial times that we may have. Well, that's why you have a reserve. Mm-hmm. And that's why you have a long-term plan. So I don't have problems with all of these ideas because I think it's responsible. So I just wanted to voice that. I know y'all are watching that, and I know we're gonna have great people like the judge keep us in line and make sure we're not spending too much money and all these things, but I do love that you put, you had like $999.50 or something in your numbers, and I'm sure if we want them, we can get a printout or whatever because you are totally transparent. Mm-hmm. And I do believe the bar is gonna continue to grow. We're gonna have a lot more people. I don't know that I like the idea of a one-time assessment we need something, you gotta pay $500 all of a sudden if you're a lawyer in Georgia. I do think it's better to say $2 this year, $3 next year, 10 years from now, $5, rather than hitting us all at once with a big number. Because I can plan more effectively for my firm if I know I'm not gonna get hit with these big fines or tax assessments or whatever we call them. Mm-hmm. So I just wanna voice support for the process that you guys and gals, I should say, are working. And I just wanted to make sure to say that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And since I sniped at the judge, I would assume there was a question there. If your question is if all of that is right, yes, all of that is correct. All right. Well, thank y'all. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Damon. Even though you're old, we promise not to replace you for $1.25 million. I will add this to the unallocated cash discussion. For those of you who got up and spoke, thank you. When I became an officer, this process really kind of got off the ground, so probably about 4 years ago, and it was this has been a major topic of discussion and consideration within the board, within the executive committee, and by staff, and you may have disagreements with how they're doing it, but I can tell you genuinely that Ron and Damon have been engaged with this, and we're budgeting to the negative. So if you look at the budgets, we're planning to spend more money than we take in, and we have a plan to identify good uses of this resource and to deploy the resource in a way that preserves our building asset that is important to this board. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot view, but I want to thank everybody who has comments, because without people speaking up 4 or 5 years ago, we wouldn't be where we are with things identified, ways to spend this cash, and then options to say, hey, we want to keep this line moving in the negative so that we don't have a resource around that we're not protecting, and so that we guard against just spending it on whatever seems like a good idea at the time. So unfortunately, I'm not going to get a boat and name it the SS State Bar, but we will get a new air conditioner. All right, next we're going to move on to the proposed changes to rules. Mr. Neesmith is going to lead the detailed discussion about this. I would like to give a little historical kind of why are we doing this today. So Betsy Griswold and Rachel Spears of the Pro Bono Partnership of Atlanta called me up sometime, I don't know, I think late fall or wintertime, December-ish, and said, hey, we've noticed that we're losing volunteers because the emeritus age is 70, and there are, in fact, people who are able to retire before the age of 70, and they want to help us with our pro bono efforts. But they are inactive, and as an inactive member, or they want to go inactive, and as an inactive member, you can't do pro bono work, and they're not emeritus yet, and they don't want to stay members of the bar and do CLE because they're retiring, but they would like to help with pro bono. So could you just lower the age of the emeritus folks by 4 or 5 years and let the good times roll? And I said, that's a great idea. Why not? Well, as all these things do, we talked about it internally. We talked with our liaisons from the court, and have been working to come up with an option so that we could get more people in the pool to do pro bono work in a way that reflects our very important duty to protect the public. So if we've got people out there doing pro bono work and they're not doing it in a way that is appropriate, we are not exercising our duty to protect the public. So I want to underscore that ultimately our duty is to protect the public. We don't need to have lawyers out there doing work who are well-intentioned, doing it for free, and engaging in legal malpractice and unethical conduct. And one of the kind of interesting dynamics amongst this is that once you go inactive or you're pro bono, what are we going to do? Take your license that you're not using anyway. So our regulatory power is somewhat limited if you've got somebody who's, at this point. So what we have come up with is a rule that Bill is going to explain to you, but I wanted to kind of give you that 30,000 foot overview of how we got here, and we've talked to some of the pro bono entities, and I understand that they generally favor this, but this is a first read. It's not an action item. So feedback, however you want to give it, you want to stand up and ask it here, you want to reach out to me or Damon or whatever, we'd appreciate it. It's the first read, and just kind of wanted to take the temperature of this group about this possibility of making it so that some inactive members and the existing emeritus members can do pro bono work under certain conditions. So with that, Bill?
Well, I feel like saying what he said. But anyway, if you'll look in your board book, you'll see that this is not proposed changes to the Georgia Rules of Professional Conduct. These are just proposed changes to the bar rules. So I just want to make sure that I clarified that. That's just sort of a typo in the book. If you turn to page 37, you'll see that there's an executive summary, and I'm not going to read to you, but I'm going to go ahead and move over to the first changes on page 39, where it says members who elect an active status may only practice law for the limited purpose of providing pro bono legal services as authorized by subsection G. And that comes a little bit later. So subsection G is what describes and explains what an inactive member can do and also what an emeritus member can do as far as doing pro bono work. On page 40, you see that we've taken out the old emeritus language and then just added back in and may not practice law except as authorized in subsection G. So it applies again to emeritus as well as inactive. And then if you go over to page 43, you will see that it says pro bono service for non-active member status, and it says any emeritus member or any inactive status member, and this is G, this is the one that kind of applies to them all, any inactive status member with at least 7 years of legal experience. So let me explain what that is and why that is. We do have, as a matter of fact, I had somebody in my law school class that graduated, passed the bar, and went active immediately. And to this day, she's still inactive. Has never practiced law. She does something different. So what we want to make sure of is we're going to have someone that is inactive, that they've at least practiced for 7 years. If you wonder where did we get the 7 years, we just thought, hey, that's what it requires to be a judge. So we thought maybe that would be okay. We just want to make sure that whoever is inactive, that they've at least practiced law and they can do the pro bono work because they have been a lawyer. So that's what that's about. The only thing I guess that's sort of a little bit different about this is that the pro bono services must be approved by the entity must be approved by the Supreme Court of Georgia. In other words, it can't just be anybody that pops up and wants to do pro bono. Probably the biggest question I get asked by emeritus members who can do pro bono now is, my next door neighbor wants me to represent them in a landline dispute. Can I do that if I do it for free, can I do that? And the answer is no, you can't. It's not, because that's not a pro bono service. Get them to go through Georgia Legal Services and maybe you could do it that way. It also, we've now added something that we are requiring a CLE relevant to the representation in the renewal period for which the member provides the pro bono services. And so what we want to make sure of is that you've at least done something and when we're saying one, that doesn't mean you can't take 10, 20, or whatever you want to take. I mean, you could take 5 hours or go to a 3-hour CLE or whatever. It's just got to be at least one in the relative area of representation. So if you're doing something that is in real estate or something like that, landlord-tenant, you'd need to have some sort of CLE that is somewhat representation of that. And you must work, the pro bono entity must work cooperatively to ensure that the pro bono client receives legal services that are up to the standards otherwise specified in the rules. So in other words, we're expecting these pro bono entities to monitor and supervise these lawyers and make sure that they are providing quality legal services. We don't want to just push off lawyers that, off on the poor because, or the financially challenged, I suppose is proper, but people who are not able to pay for legal services, we don't want to give them second-rate services. We want to give them first-class services. That's what this rule aims to do. So I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any. Must have been a good explanation. Well, here we go.
Mr. Neesmith, am I correct that under subparagraph G, those of us enjoying our golden years who are enjoying also being grandmothered in to the requirement of CLE this would not apply to, this would have a CLE, the anomalous situation of having a CLE requirement for somebody who's inactive, whereas as an active member, I have none. Is that true?
I don't know if I understood what you asked, but if what you're saying is, are you still going to have to do a CLE to be able to do pro bono, even though you're exempt from CLE because
If you're exempted from CLE because you were exempt at the time the rule changed,
You're not exempt from this.
you would still, if you're inactive or emeritus, you would have to do it.
Yes.
But if you're an active member that enjoys that exemption, you would not have to do it.
That's correct.
Do we have any thought about the nature of practice for the 7 years, or that they actively practiced in Georgia? Because couldn't they, I guess, move here from California and then join the bar through some reciprocity and then go inactive and then ask to be able to do this? And is that something we want to do or don't want people to do, I guess?
Well, I mean, if what you're saying is that it's, I don't know how often that would happen, that somebody would practice law in another state, move here, and immediately go inactive. But if they did that, you know, I guess to maybe put it to the extreme, suppose somebody was a retired 30-year judge from another state and comes here, will we allow them to do pro bono, or say, no, you're not qualified?
Right, I can see where in some instances that would be perfectly fine depending on their experience. At other times it might be concerning, so I don't know if there's any way for us to regulate that or require them to have some ties to Georgia before they ask to do this, or be a member of the bar in good standing here for 2 years or anything like that. Have y'all?
Well, paragraph 4 says the pro bono entity must work cooperatively to
So
ensure.
we would be expecting the organization to vet their people somewhat
Sure.
before
And they do
would-
now. They already do. And
All
do
right.
a very good job at it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning. Being in Athens, I think it's appropriate to say I have a dog in this fight. I am the executive director of Georgia Legal Services, one of the approved pro bono providing organizations in Georgia. And my stellar staff cannot meet all of the need we have for legal services throughout our state. This change adds, according to Damon, who I got the number from, 7,843 inactive members who would now be eligible to do pro bono work. So I want to thank the bar for extending this to inactive members. As you see in here, the CLE requirement is there. We provide CLE before many of our clinics that people volunteer for. If you haven't done a clinic and haven't received your CLE from Georgia Legal Services, we welcome you to the next one. But thank you for having this change that gives more lawyers the opportunity to do more good for more people.
I'll just echo Susan's comments and note to the judge's question that happened before, this opens up quite a few military spouses who come to Georgia who may have practiced in other states and were brought here by their spouse. They've practiced, they are intelligent, they've passed the bar in whatever state, and they are looking to do opportunities. So if they take a Wills Clinic CLE, we would love to have them help with the Wills Clinic. But we have seen that as a request for years now, and I'm thankful that this is an opportunity now.
Stephen Morris, the Okmulgee Circuit. Just have a question about the 7-year requirement. It doesn't say 7 years in Georgia versus other states, as we've just kind of had that
Correct.
discussion. So it doesn't matter what state the experience is, as long as they were active in.
As long as they've been yes, they practiced law for at least 7 years somewhere.
And I guess my other question would be why, I know you said 7 years because that's what it takes to be a judge, but if you're trying to encourage pro bono work, you know, like your situation, if somebody was inactive and wanted to, you know, suddenly volunteer pro bono services, but then they have to become active for 7 years to provide that.
No, they've had to practice 7 years in their, they had to have at least 7 years practice.
Right, but if somebody like you, in your example, you said you have a friend that has never practiced.
Correct.
So, you know, they retire, they're barred, but they've never practiced, so
Right.
they would have to then become active for 7 years? So,
Yes.
I guess.
Believe me, I know this person, a very, very bright person, but I would be scared to death if she represented me.
And that's fair. And I'm not saying we make them eligible right away, but I just think 7 years is a little long.
We can adjust the number. I mean, just let somebody know what and why. But I mean, I think a couple of years is not enough. I mean, when I started practicing law, you know, about year 3, I could figure out where the courthouse was. And, you know, it just kind of builds over time.
Yeah, I think somewhere in the 3-year range, I think would probably, if we're trying to encourage people to do pro bono work.
Yeah, well, I mean, if somebody thinks different on the number of years,
Sure.
I hate to admit this, but there's some things about life that are kind of arbitrary, and 7 versus 5, you could argue pretty easily is arbitrary. So, any other comments? That this has all been helpful. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you, Bill. Okay, we've moved on to the voting part. So hopefully everybody by now has a tool for voting, which hopefully looks like this. And we're going to go to the first poll question. It's very controversial. The first poll question, should it come up? Do I have to do this or do you do that? All right. There, thank you. Ooh, that is a long way away. I don't think my bifocals are going to work that far away. I used to be able to see the number of votes. I can't see it today, Jennifer. That is too far away. So, very controversial. What is your preferred streaming service? Netflix, Prime, Apple TV, Disney Plus, other? Although Paramount's not up here, I would encourage you to vote against it. I love the show Landman, but their app is awful. All right. So if you'll go ahead and vote, how are we headed on the votes? All right, we get to 100. Let's let it rip. Okay, everybody seems to be a big fan of Netflix or other. Maybe they may encourage some Paramount Plus votes inadvertently. All right, the clickers seem to be working, so we will move on to the minutes of the 305th meeting of the Board of Governors. That's from January 11th of 2025 by Secretary Hicks. If you'll present the minutes.
The minutes from the 305th meeting, our mid-year meeting, are found on page 51 of your board book. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Okay.
David doesn't raise his hand. All right, we'll pull up the poll question. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Do I have a second? Okay, if we'll pull up the poll question. And that poll question is, do you approve the minutes of the 305th meeting of the Board of Governors as presented? Only Board of Governors members votes, and you click A to approve and B not to approve. All right, we'll go ahead and publish the results of the poll. Well, we have 2 people who do not like those minutes. Okay, we'll move on to the approval of a formal advisory opinion board appointment, and that is Professor Tia Gibbs, who's been nominated for this position. Do I have a motion to appoint Professor Gibbs? Do I have a second? Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to the poll question. If you'll open the poll. All right, the poll is open. Please vote. The poll question before you now that's been properly moved and seconded is, do you approve the appointment of the formal advisory opinion board as presented? Click A to approve and B to not approve. Jennifer, how are we? Heck, let's go. We'll publish the poll. The vote's closing. And we have 5 people who disapprove, but that passes overwhelmingly. All right, we'll move on to our heavy lifting. And before we do this, I do want to say our fall and spring meetings can feel like we have somewhat of a light agenda, but this is a super important meeting. And as I look out there are a lot of y'all here. And we got a nice full room, and I appreciate the engagement by the people who are asking questions. And I pause to do this at this moment because the dues and the budget are some of the absolutely critical work that we do, and we need to have the engagement on it. We need to talk about it, and I think it is much enhanced when we are all here together. And this meeting is important because the timing of it has to happen now, because we had to have all the committee work and everything that led into us being able to present a budget. And we got to pass it because we've then got to publish a dues statement that everybody is going to have to respond to here shortly. So I want to thank you for your engagement. And with that, Mr. Gentry, all right, whatever you want to do it.
Good morning again. So I want to share some thoughts with you about the budget. The budget and the recommended dues level were initially approved by the Finance Committee on January 30th of this year and by the Executive Committee about a month ago, and are recommended at $270 for active members, and as our rule, half that, $135 for inactive. That is a slight increase of $6 for active members, $3 for inactive members. It's about a 2% increase in dues. This increase is due to a number of factors: 2 new positions for the Office of General Counsel, which are critically needed, and an overall increase in personnel costs for salaries and benefits as approved by the Personnel Committee, inflationary costs, expenses, program designed for meetings and travel, an increase in cost and expense for computer hardware, software, maintenance for the website, and an increase in funding for the Programs Committee and other changes. Now, we've got all this detailed at page 58 and the subsequent pages in your board book, so feel free to read through. Salary increases have been approved for a maximum of 4%. There'll be a 2% cost of living adjustment and up to a 2% merit increase. But that's essentially it. So the first step in the process, and Ivy will go into this a little bit more, is the adoption of the recommendation of the Executive Committee to raise the active dues to $270 and the inactive dues to $135.
Yeah, so a little bit of procedure here. We're going to have 4 action items related to the budget. One is going to be with the amount of dues. The next one's going to be the dues statement. The next one's going to be to approve the budget. And then the next one's going to be to approve the financial resolutions as presented. So that's the flow here. So the first question is whether or not the board approves the recommendation of the Executive Committee for the license fees in the amount of $270 for active members and for $135 for inactive members. Do I have a motion on the, do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Or is there any discussion?
I'll refer my right honorable friend to the comments I made earlier.
All right, the previous comments are reflected in the record, and we appreciate your willingness to not restate said comments. All right, having properly been moved, seconded, and discussed by reference to previous comments, we'd like to open the poll. All right, and before you is yes, I approve, and no, I don't approve. The question is, do you approve the recommendation of the Executive Committee for license fees in the amount of $270 for active members and $135 for only active members, and of course, only members of the Board of Governors should be voting. And do we have 100 votes? Please vote. All right, let's publish the poll. Okay, that passes 84 to 22. And we will move to our next question, Mr. Gentry.
Thank you. There are several items that will appear on the dues statement. One, and these are also reflected in your agenda items in the first few pages of the board book. Approval of other bar dues statement items, Center for Lawyer Wellbeing and section dues, a $10 to $50 opt-in. You do not have to do this, although it's encouraged by me personally. Assessments required by bar dues or mandated by the Supreme Court. Client Security Fund, $15 per member per Bar Rule 1-506. The professionalism fee of $11 per year. And other contributions, legislative and public education fund contribution, $100 optional contribution. Georgia Legal Services Program, all the good work that Susan and her people do, $400 suggested individual contribution, $100 suggested contribution for YLD.
Okay, and with that, the question is, do you approve the bar dues statement items as listed on the agenda? Center for Lawyer Wellbeing and section dues, assessments required by bar rules are mandated by the Supreme Court, and all other contributions as presented. Do I have a motion to approve that? Do I have a second? Is there any discussion about the dues statement? Hearing no discussion for discussion now or to be referenced by prior discussion. That was a joke. We'll open the poll. Please vote if you, yes to approve, B to not approve, or A to approve, B to not approve. Do you approve the other bar due statement items as listed on the agenda, Center for Lawyer Wellbeing and section dues assessments required by bar rules or mandated by the Supreme Court and other contributions as presented? I'm glad I don't have to say that again. All right. 98, come on, people. All right, we're going to publish the poll. Folks can't get to their clicker. All right, that passes 80, I can't read it, it's up there, 89 to 100, or 89 to 11. All right. I think I'll just present the
You
next
take it
one.
from here.
Yep, thank you. All right, the next question is, do you approve the 2025 to 2026 State Bar Consolidated Budget, including the total operating budget and bar center budget as presented? Do I have a motion to approve the 2025 to 2026 budget? Second? I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion of the budget? All right, seeing no one rise for discussion, we will open the poll. All right, the question has been moved and seconded, and you need to click A to approve and B to not approve. So A, if you approve the 2025 to 2026 State Bar Consolidated Budget, including the total operating budget and bar center budget as presented, please vote now so that we can move on to the next one. All right, let's publish we're closing the votes and publishing the poll. 87 approve and 14 do not. It always fascinates me when the numbers move and the same number of people don't disapprove, but that's just me. All right, poll question number 4. The question before you is, do you approve all financial resolutions as presented? Do I have a motion to approve all financial resolutions as presented? Do I have a second? All right, is there any discussion about the financial resolutions? All right, hearing no discussion, let's open the poll. All right, the question before you that's been properly moved and seconded, and that's A, yes to approve, and B, to not approve. And if you all vote quickly, you won't have to listen to me wait on you. But do you approve all financial resolutions as presented? Do we have 100? No, my goodness. Y'all thinking about this one? All right. All right, we got 100, so we're going to go ahead and close the poll and publish the results. That's 91 to 10. The financial resolutions are less objectionable. All right. That takes us to our written reports that you will find in your board book. We have executive committee minutes. We have the report of the law practice management report. We have sections reports. We have a report from the Institute of Continuing Legal Education and a report from the Chief Justice's Commission on Professionalism. We also have the media report, so I commend those to you. And your board book's thin, so they ought to be pretty easy to find. And those are on pages 92 to 119 of your board book. Then, is there any old business that we need to discuss? Hearing none, is there any new business that we need to discuss? Yes?
I apologize because I meant to ask this question when I was up earlier and then I forgot.
All right.
But I believe we do this, but I just wanted to clarify, so it's not really new business. But when we have this unallocated monies or monies, is it also invested somewhere where we're getting like 4.5% or something like that? I'm sure we do that.
We have a there's more money that is under management by the bar, and we have a robust investment program that is reviewed by an investments committee and handled, and Ron is our chief lead on that. So if you have any specific questions, he's happy to handle them, but the short answer is yes.
Glad to hear it. Thank you.
Susan?
You don't read your text when you're conducting meetings.
I was actually going to ask you to make that announcement, and for the record, I have reminder to complete Supreme Court regulatory survey right here. So, but go ahead. You're going to do it much better than I would.
So the Supreme Court has a regulatory reform committee to try to increase the ability for people who don't have access to justice to be able to find lawyers or advocates or paralegals to do that. Kevin Patrick is on my subcommittee. There are other bar members on the committee. But we would encourage you to take the survey that was recently sent to all bar members, both about what happens in rural and in big city communities, because it's different, so we need everybody across the state to answer that. I've been told it takes about 12 minutes to answer, so please go back and look at that survey and take that so we have your input into the committee's work. Thank you.
And Jennifer, whose email address would that have come from? If somebody was
From
it?
the state bar.
Well, yeah, okay. So if you're looking, go look. If you can't find the survey, it's on the website. Reach out to one of us, but getting that completed is important. So thank you, Susan, for that reminder, Judge Baker.
Good morning, Ivy.
Good morning.
I would just like for everyone to join me in wishing our Secretary, Giovanna, happy birthday. Her birthday is this coming Wednesday.
Happy birthday. You have an
Thank you, Judge. That's so sweet. Reminder, make sure you sign your attendance sheet before you leave. If you have it, don't walk out with it. Make sure that you turn it back in, bring it up to the front. Thank you.
Yeah, and the the survey's like webmaster at State Bar, and it went out on Wednesday. So if you're looking for it, you can look for your emails from Wednesday. Damon. All right, well, we got more birthdays. Damon says that Bill's is Thursday and Kenny's is Friday. So happy birthday to y'all as well. And mine will be in a couple weeks if you want to send gift cards. April 7th. Any other comments? Yes. Don't take your clicker home. Give them back to us so you can vote next time. All right, we're still on new business, people. Any more new business? We've just transitioned to announcements. I like it. Judge Cannon got up and got me worried for a minute. All right. All right, announcements. We have the regulatory survey. Also, the Board of Governors elections are open, so if you got a ballot that you haven't returned, and especially if you have any contested elections, make sure that you vote. And if you have a representative, well, I guess you are the representative, so go vote for yourself. And any other remarks, comments, or questions? I want to thank everybody for coming to Athens. It's good to see everybody. It's always great to get together. Thank you for doing the heavy lifting that we do on behalf of the members of the State Bar of Georgia. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you. Have a great day.